All right, let's dive right in. We're going to talk about something pretty incredible, and honestly, something that's often totally misunderstood. The unseen co-pilot that's helping fly the very planes you and I travel on. So, let me just ask you this. When you're up there cruising along at 35,000 feet, who do you think is actually flying the plane? The answer, well, it's way more complex, and frankly, a lot more amazing than you probably imagine. You see, it's not just the human pilot. Up there with them is this unseen co-pilot. And this isn't just one single computer. It's a whole system, layers upon layers of technology that have been built up over decades. We've gone from just relying on basic physics all the way to, well, you'll see. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack. Okay, so to really get how a computer can fly a plane, we have to start with the basics. We need to understand how a plane wants to fly, all by itself. And that all comes down to the physics of stability.
First up is something called static stability. Now, think of this as the plane's gut reaction. Its immediate, knee-jerk response. A gust of wind hits it, what does it do in that very first second? Does it try to level back out? Does it just stay in that new weird position? Or does it get even worse? That split-second reaction, that's static stability.
And then there's dynamic stability. This is the long game. It's about what happens after that initial reaction. So after that gust of wind, does the plane eventually smooth itself out and get back to flying normally? Or does it keep wobbling back and forth? Does that wobble get smaller and smaller until it disappears? Or does it get bigger? That's dynamic stability. So let's break it down into three types. The passenger jet you fly on, it has positive stability. You nudge it, and it wants to go right back to flying straight and level. It's comfortable. Then there's neutral stability, where if you push it into a bank, it'll just stay in that bank. Fighter jets often use computers to make them fly like this. And then you've got negative stability, and that is pure chaos. Any tiny disturbance just gets worse and worse. Without a computer helping out, it's completely unflyable.
And that last one, that need for a computer to constantly help out, that's what basically threw open the cockpit door and invited our digital co-pilot inside.
So here's the huge shift in thinking that happened. See, old planes were built to be naturally stable. You could almost take your hands off the controls. But to get the mind-bending performance of modern jets, designers often make them intentionally unstable. It's called relaxed static stability. They literally rely on fly-by-wire computers making thousands of tiny adjustments every single second just to keep them flying straight. So, if you're going to rely on computers that much, you need a central brain to run the whole show, right? Well, that's where the Flight Management System, or FMS, comes in. This is where our unseen co-pilot really comes to life. And the crazy thing about the FMS is just how connected it is. I mean, it is the ultimate multitasker. It's the hub that's constantly talking to everything. The GPS, the flight controls, the engines, the fuel systems, the displays in front of the pilots, even surveillance systems watching for weather in other planes. It's the orchestra conductor, making sure every part works together perfectly. So how does it juggle all that? Well, it basically has 5 main jobs. First, it has to know exactly where it is in the world. Then it takes the flight plan and computes this perfect 4-dimensional path. That's latitude, longitude, altitude, and time. It figures out the most efficient way to get from A to B. And then finally, it sends the actual commands to the autopilot to fly that perfect path. Okay, so the FMS is an amazing navigator. It's a master of efficiency. But what about safety? What happens if a pilot commands the plane to do something dangerous? Well, that's where the next layer of our digital co-pilot comes in. It becomes a guardian angel. This whole idea is called flight envelope protection. Now, the envelope is basically the safe zone for the plane. How fast it can go, how steeply it can turn, all that stuff. This system creates a digital safety net around the airplane. And if a pilot makes a command that would push the plane outside that safety bubble, the computer will just say, nope, not going to do that. And you might think, well, doesn't that limit the pilot? But the philosophy behind it is actually the exact opposite. The idea is that it frees them from having to worry. In a crazy emergency, a pilot can just pull back on the stick as hard as they can, knowing the computer will give them the absolute maximum performance possible without stalling the plane or breaking something. But here's where it gets really fascinating. The 2 biggest airplane makers in the world, Airbus and Boeing, have completely different ideas about this. In an Airbus, the computer is the boss. It has the final say, and its protections can't be overridden. But in a Boeing, the pilot always has the ultimate authority. If they push or pull hard enough on the controls, they can override the computer. 2 very different philosophies on who should really be in charge. So,
That brings us to the latest, and I think you'll agree, the most mind-blowing evolution of our unseen co-pilot. This is the ultimate backup plan.
It's the one scenario that nobody ever wants to even think about, but you have to plan for it. What happens if the humans up front simply can't fly the plane anymore?
The answer is a system called Garmin Autoland. And listen, this isn't some future sci-fi tech. This is real. It's certified, and it's flying on planes today. And it's designed so that with a single push of a big red button, a button a passenger could push, the system takes complete control of the aircraft.
And here's the truly staggering part. In less than a second, just 0.8 seconds, the system chews through every single variable you can think of: fuel on board, weather everywhere, terrain, runway lengths, everything. And it decides on the single safest airport to land at. The speed of that decision is it's almost unbelievable.
And once it's activated, it just runs the show. It evaluates all its options. It automatically tells air traffic control there's an emergency by squawking the code 7700. It navigates the plane to the airport. It puts down the landing gear and flaps. It lands the plane on the runway. It hits the brakes, and it even shuts down the engine, all on its own.
Don't just take my word for it. Even the seasoned test pilots who fly this system are just blown away. After one flight, test pilot Eric Sargent said he could only think of one word to describe it: amazing.
So, let's just take a breath for a second and look at this incredible journey. The cockpit today is not what it was 50 or even 20 years ago. It's a constantly evolving space.
We've literally gone from pilots just managing the basic physics of flight to having a partner that can manage the entire route, to being protected by a digital guardian angel, all the way to a system that can, in the worst-case scenario, step in and land the plane all by itself.
And all of this leads us to one big, thought-provoking question. The pilot's job has already changed from being a stick and rudder flyer to being more of a high-level systems manager. So as these unseen co-pilots get smarter and smarter, what does the future look like for the human in the cockpit? That's a question that everyone in aviation is trying to answer right now.